Hello everyone, this is Tim with Paintball Tek. Today I'm going to go over rebuilding a standard style STO Autococker Ram for you. This is the Ram that Wargames released on their 2000 series models. There's other companies that copied this style, Shocktech, KAPP, just to name a couple. So this rebuild pretty much covers all of those styles as well. They're all pretty similar once you open them up. To get this Ram apart, they were sealed in the back here, usually by Loctite. Some aftermarket Rams will have an O-ring here to seal the Ram base and the Ram barrel together, but most of the STO style Rams like this have just blue Loctite sealing the threads here on the back. The easiest way to get them apart is just to heat them with a standard propane torch, something like this. Just needs a little bit of heat, and then what you're going to do is hold on to the Ram barrel with either a glove or a piece of rubber or leather or something along those lines, and use a standard 7/16 wrench to grab the back to loosen the Ram base from the barrel. The other way you can do it is by putting the Ram barrel into a vise with a set of soft jaws or a couple pieces of soft wood so that it's not going to mar the finish, or this tool, which is a 7LW locking wrench from Irwin, vice grip company. This is made to grab onto hex pieces, but it also works really well on round parts like this. So you can grab the barrel like this and it only contacts 3 small points, so it doesn't leave marks. It's not like you're using a vice grips with the serrated jaws. Then you can use this to hold the Ram barrel at the front where it's sturdiest, and then use your 7/16 wrench to screw it off in the back. So for the sake of time, I've already broken this one free, broken the Loctite free, so that I can just unscrew the Ram barrel off the base, separate the parts. When you separate it out, this is the 3 pieces that you're going to see. There are only 2 O-rings in here, one on the front of the Ram shaft and one inside the Ram base here, which sits about right here inside this housing. This one's obviously the easiest to replace. It's just a number 10, a 010 O-ring. Pop it off, grab your new seal, and it fits on just like that. Now the other 2 pieces on here are bumpers, one in the front and one in the back of this this O-ring section. The easiest way to check these, because they are standard polyurethane discs, is you can just take a thumbnail or fingernail and try and pick away at the edge of the top one and the bottom one. If you could pick away chunks, that usually means that the polyurethane is old and worn out and brittle, and it's going to need to be replaced. If you don't replace it, chances are you're going to rebuild the Ram. It's been sitting for a while. As soon as you start to use it, these are going to hit the front and back of your housing, and they'll start to disintegrate and cause all sorts of fun problems. These don't seem to be chipping, so I'm going to leave them alone. You can buy these bumpers through boccepaintball.com and also through his eBay web store. He sells them in pairs, so you buy one set of 2 and they come for 1 Ram, front and back. So if you do have to clean out your Ram barrel, a handy dandy tool to have is something like this, which is just a standard 9mm pistol swab. You can buy it at most sporting goods stores, or places like Big 5 or Walmart, anywhere that sells gun accessories. These swab inside and out really well and clean out places like Ram shafts and Ram barrels. Now, the one that's going to be fun to try and dig out is the number 6 inside this housing. It sits inside here. You're going to want to have something like this, which is a long skinny pick with a small hook on the end or a barb. Something that you can get in and dig that O-ring out of the groove with. It can be kind of a pain sometimes. Like this one's being. Okay, so the other end of my pick has a little barb on it, so I pulled a chunk out and now I can use this to fish it out. Okay. Standard STO style rams with this size ram shaft pretty much always use a number 6 O-ring. There are some rams that have a thicker ram shaft that will use a larger O-ring, like a 7 or an 8. You can always check the size by putting your new O-ring on the shaft and sliding it up and down. It should be snug, but not super tight. It should not be loose. You should not be able to hold the shaft up and have the O-ring slide down freely. It should be tight. Now, the trick I've found to replace this O-ring inside here, because it is kind of a pain, use a 5/32 punch. 5/32 will fit in one side and not the other. So it'll fit through the front side of this housing, but not the back. When it goes in the front, it stops at the ledge where the O-ring sits, about right here. And you can use basically the back end of your ram shaft, or this is one that I have that was bent, that I've made a special tool for this. You basically want to use this to push the O-ring in from the other side, and it'll wiggle its way in and seat on that ledge. So take your 6, squeeze it down, push it in the back of this housing, and then use this tool to kind of push it in and against that 5/32 punch that's in the other side, and kind of wiggle it around until it seats. The easiest way to check is just by looking down inside the housing, see if the O-ring is seated. This one's not seated yet, so kind of wiggle it around a little bit more, and there it's in. I don't know if you can see that. You can use if you have a ram shaft tool like this, you can use this to kind of poke through and see that it's in. If not, you just use your standard ram shaft and poke it through, make sure that it's in there tight and it slides easily like this. To make this a little bit easier, I've got these dedicated tools. Like I said, this is a 5/32 diameter punch, and the ends on these are just beveled ever so slightly, so it's not going to damage the O-ring, and you're pushing it against, pushing these tools against each other, so it pushes the ring out into the groove where it's supposed to be sitting. Now, to reassemble these, you're going to need, obviously, some blue Loctite. Don't need a ton, just a little bit, and a little bit of grease, and some oil as well. I like to use both. So I'm going to put some grease on the shaft and grease on the O-ring. This is just a light silicone grease, Dow 7 to be exact. You can also use Dow 33, which is the more common, and then a little bit of oil as well. This just gets the O-rings and the shaft greased up. And then also you want to put some oil on the number 6 that's inside this housing. This little dripper bottle helps really well because it has this little needle tip on it. But if you have just a standard dripper, that also works as well. Okay. Now, clean off your surfaces really well so that they will accept the Loctite. Use isopropyl alcohol if you have it, or Loctite primer, which helps really well. Then you're going to want to put the shaft inside the barrel. Make sure it's smooth. And then coat the back end of the housing with some Loctite. There's this blank space after the threads, and that's going to fill up with the sealant. So you just want to coat those threads with the Loctite. Push your two parts together, screw them together like this. And you don't need to have them torqued super tight, just hand tight. Then you're going to want to wipe off any excess Loctite that's on there. Then you can check for compression by covering the front hole with your finger, seeing if the ram snaps back. That means that it's getting a good compression seal on this shaft O-ring. You can do it similarly on the back one. It should pop back. And that's all you need to do to rebuild a STO ram. Thank you very much. Have a good day.